Okay, so now that we've got our fire circle built, now we're going to build a drying rack and a tripod to go over this. And this is an old one that I created about a year or two ago, and it's all done with vines. And honestly, it's held up fantastic, but since I'm doing completely new camp structures here, I'm actually going to tear this apart with the vines and retie it with a little bit of paracord so that it'll last longer. We have, you know, hundreds and hundreds of students that come out here every year to this exact camp and have used these same items for survival techniques, and they've held up fine. And vines work great. Paracord is preferable if you got it. So I'm going to show you how to build a meat drying rack to make smoked jerky, dry fruits and vegetables and things like that. And this is definitely an essential item of campcraft that you have to have for your fire. So I was feeling a little bit sentimental. I've had this tripod forever, it seems like, so I decided to cut 3 new ones. Basically what you're going to do is kind of measure out how wide you want your platform, and you're going to cut the poles based on how wide you want it. I want this one to be a little bit wider because I want to be able to put more meat on them, so I'm going to cut it a little bit taller. Now that you've got the tripod lashed together with just a simple little lashing, then you're going to come over here and stretch it out over your fireplace and see how well it fits. And if you get one side that's a little bit too high, let's say you're on a hill, then go ahead and trim that. And after you get that done, then you're going to go ahead and we're going to start building our racks. Alright guys, so it's been a long time since the last clip. I actually took a couple of months in between because something came up that day, and then I had to leave, and then basically we've been doing nothing but working on the camp non-stop. But I finally got some time to start shooting some YouTube videos again, and so I wanted to finish up this smoke rack video. And basically what I'm doing right now is I'm tying kind of my side pieces in, my support poles. And this is going to give me a structure so that I can lay some beams across the top to lay my jerky and my fruits and things on. Basically all I'm doing is just taking some paracord, and you can use vines. Those work actually really excellent. I've had smoke racks last for a couple of years before just using vines, so I don't think that it's necessarily going to be less effective if you want to go totally primitive. But just going to lash this on, and this is the last one. And really the one main thing that you really have to pay attention to with these smoke racks is that it's not too close to the fire. And when you do get your fire going and you actually have meat on the rack, you want to make sure that that fire doesn't get too hot. The smoke is nothing more than for flavoring. If you've ever eaten jerky that doesn't have a smoke flavoring, it's just terrible in my opinion. So it's got to have some kind of flavoring. And it's also to help keep the bugs away, especially in warmer weather. It's winter right now, so bugs aren't as big an issue, but having that smoke to give it the flavoring and keep the bugs off of it is the main reason that we do this over the fire pit. You can actually just dry your meat. You could hang strips of it out in the sun, high up so that nothing could get to it. If you didn't want to construct a rack or you were in a hurry, just the wind and heat and sunshine is enough to dry your meat out. So the next step in the process is after you get your side rails put in, and each side rail is about 2 fists high so that you've got enough room to be able to kind of get in and out of here to put meats and whatever it is you're planning to dry out on your rack here. So all I'm doing is taking this and trimming it to where it's a few inches over on each side. You don't want it just hanging right up to the edge because you'll end up knocking it and it'll bump it into the fire, so you need some overlap. And I'm using bamboo. We've got bamboo and river cane, at least right around in this area. You probably wouldn't have that up north or out west, but definitely down here in the south. But it doesn't really matter what you use. I just like bamboo for the simple fact of it's super straight, it's fairly abundant, and it doesn't have any bark on it. Typically on a smoke rack, if you have time, you want to remove all the bark so that your meat and stuff doesn't stick to the bark and it comes off in little pieces. So bamboo works really great. So I'm gonna finish out the rest of these racks, and then we'll show you the finished product. Notice how the sticks are stacked right next to each other so that there is no jostling too much when you're taking meat and fruits and veggies off the rack. That can be a big deal. They'll accidentally drop into the fire. So having them butted up is nice. Alright, so here's the finished product. You know, this can be completed with nothing more than about 10 feet of paracord if you really had to skimp. You know, just pull out the innards. You know, this isn't holding much weight, so you don't have to worry about that. Like I said, you can do it with vines. You don't need any modern materials if you don't want to use them or waste them. You know, a big thing in survival is conservation of the materials that you bring out there with you. So, you know, if you don't have much cordage, definitely go with the vine route or use the innards to tie it together. Another quick little tip, if y'all have ever seen that movie Into the Wild, where the guy goes up to Alaska and basically dies out in the bush because he starves to death and he ate the plant and all that good stuff. One of the reasons the guy starved to death is because he didn't know how to properly construct a smoke rack, and he didn't build one before he actually took the moose, or he didn't build a proper one before the moose. So anytime you're going to go after big game, and depending on how big the game is going to kind of determine the scale of the smoke rack that you're going to create. And our ancestors, they didn't have refrigerators, so when they killed something, they had to have a smoke rack to bring it back to. So before you go out and get your elk or your deer or something along those lines, build this up at the camp, get it ready. That way, so that when you butcher the animal, you can come back and directly start getting it ready so that the flies and you can't get maggots in it and things like that. Another thing is a quick little tip. Let's say you take an elk or a deer or something along those lines. Those things have pretty big hides. So what you can do to improve the overall smoking efficiency of this smoke rack is to literally take the hide, and especially like if it was a big elk hide or something like that, you could drape it right over the top to where it'll basically hold all the smoke inside of it, which is going to give it that added flavor. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, smoked meats are great as long as they get a heavy amount of smoke on them. If you don't get much smoke flavoring, you know, it just really isn't that good. You know, another thing that you can do to improve the flavoring is add stuff like, you know, chopped up onions or wild edibles. We have a plant around here that we nickname Allspice or Spice Bush, and you can grind that up and put it on meats, and it's fantastic. So there's a lot of different things that you can do out here to improve, you know, your bushcraft living standard. And this is a great way to you know, get all your meat ready and produce larger amounts of it in shorter amounts of time when you've already got a fire going anyway. This is going to be, you know, your main hangout area next to your shelter. The main portion of the fire is essentially the warming area. Then you've got your keyhole, you've got your smoke rack, you've got a skillet area to throw pots and pans on, and the next thing that we're going to build is a pot hanging rack so that you have a way to suspend like your Dutch oven or your lightweight camping gear easily over the fire. So make sure you check out the next part, and as always guys, please help support the American Self-Reliance movement by sharing these videos, telling your friends you know, about survival, not just because, you know, for our business purposes, but just because we want this information out there. We want to make sure that Americans are prepared for what might potentially be coming so that they can at least start getting that mindset of going off the grid, whether it be in the woods or homesteading or whatever their interests might be. So share, like, and subscribe, and thanks for your support as always.